Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Hadith disciples worldwide and those who are in the physical essence as well, the local disciples as well. If there are any questions, inshallah ta'ala, we'll try to take some. I believe we had a few left over from from the Thursday that just passed. And Allah knows best. Fadl Abdul Wadud.
Yeah, let's say you out and about and for whatever purpose you're in the state of Judah and you have like maybe a small window to say your prayer, 15 minutes or so, whatever. And you want to catch the Jannah. What would be the best advice that you can give to a person in that state?
First question says, if you were out and about and you were junub, you were in a state of janaba, meaning you were spiritually defiled because of ejaculation or because of sexual contact. You were junub, which we should know what junub is and what janaba is. For those who don't, if a person ejaculates through sexual intercourse, through a wet dream, through masturbation, they become junub. If a man has vaginal intercourse with a woman without a barrier, his private area enters into hers. Even if he doesn't ejaculate, then he's also junub. He also becomes junub. And the same applies for a woman. So you're out and about and you're junub and it's time to pray and you only have 15 minutes left and you want to catch the jama'ah, so on and so forth. Question is important, but a big part of the question is extremely hypothetical. If there's only 15 minutes left, a short window of prayer remaining or time for the prayer remaining, how would you be able to catch the jama'ah? That's not really plausible. At the end of the day, the salat comes in. The salat is about to go out. Make the tayammum. Perform the tayammum with clean dirt, clean sand. And many ulama say anything that comes from the earth, even if it's a flat, smooth rock, wood, that comes from the ground. One could possibly argue and say the mahogany, the panel in your car is wood. It comes from a tree. It comes from the earth. As-sa'id. Okay? That's a long discussion on what you can make tayammum with or without. What's important is perform the tayammum and pray. Last but not least is for a Muslim to be in a state of janaba and to go outside of his or her home and to be that careless and reckless with regards to the time is a big no-no. Okay? How did the person get into the state of janaba after the prayer had come in? That's the first problem. It's 5 o'clock, Asr's in. I don't pray at 5, 5:15, 5:30. I wait till 6 o'clock. Then I'll become junub. You should have prayed within an hour. Then from 6, 7, 8 to 8:30, wait to 8:20, 8:10, 8:15 to think about Asr. Something that's seriously what? Seriously wrong. So the Muslim has to manage his or her time properly. And the salat, without a doubt, has to be at the top of your list of prioritizing and strategically planning your trip. Dentist office, mall, pick up the shoes for my son, go here, go this, traffic, so on and so forth, back home, masjid, etc. Top of the list. And that's what Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he wrote to some of his governors. He said to them, "Inna ahama a'malikum indi salah." He says, the most important of your duties to me is the prayer. The most important of your duties to me is your prayer. And how many important duties did the governors of Umar have in the other lands outside of Medina? But the prayer is the top. And Allah knows best. The same rule applies to praying sitting down in the car, not having wudu, not being junub. You have to prioritize. But for argument's sake, if you get caught in that jammed up situation, that's the ruling. Make the tayammum and perform the prayer. Abdul Raqib.
Let's say you come into the masjid and they're on the second rak'ah and you join. To pray back, should you recite only Surah Fatiha or Surah Fatiha with another surah?
So you come in the masjid and you're 1 rak'ah late, correct?
Yes.
So what rak'ah did you come in on your last rak'ah or on it depends on the prayer. Because you may miss the first rak'ah of Dhuhr Asr and it's their second rak'ah and you're first and you still would recite a surah after Fatiha. So it depends. Let's say for example Maghrib. You came and you missed the first 2 rak'ah of Maghrib. It's their third rak'ah in which the Imam is going to only recite the Fatiha. Even though it's a discussion of the permissibility and the recommendation of reciting a surah along with the Fatiha in the other rak'at as well. But let's go with the traditional way. The normal way that most people do, in which they only recite the Fatiha and the last rak'ah or the last 2 rak'ah. طيب? So it's their third rak'ah. He's only reciting the Fatiha, and it's your third rak'ah. You're praying behind him. If he recites this Fatiha slowly or you recite in a quick manner, do what you're supposed to do. And you following the Imam in any prayer is only that which is outward and apparent. If your prayer is different than his, then you follow the outward surah. If he's sitting making tashahhud, you're not making tashahhud, you're just sitting. Because that's outward. But inwardly, you saying it, you don't have to do that. Clear on that? Allah knows best. Abu Sa'id.
I'm a project other morning, and the brother was holding the adhan, and he had said Salatu Khairun min an-Nawm a couple of times, and he was kind of stuck after that. He didn't know what to say. And the brothers was basically saying that is this something that he has to say for the Salatu Fajr adhan, Salatu Khairun min an-Nawm? Is this wajib to say, or is it sunnah? Is it a bid'ah? Look, I read it. Some people were saying that it's a bid'ah to say that only for the Salatul Fajr adhan.
Tayyib, the question says regarding someone who's making the adhan for Salat al-Fajr. And then when they get to the part, As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm, As-salatu khayrun min an-nawm, they forget, they get stuck, they don't know what to say afterwards, etc. Does he have to say it? Is the adhan valid, invalid? Does he have to complete it? Is it obligatory or recommended to say that? Is it a bid'ah to say that, etc.? Keep things brief in a little bit amount of time that we have. Saying as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And no one will say that it's a bid'ah except for someone who's ignorant. That's from the authentic sunnah to say as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. And the Prophet ﷺ's words and his instructions with regards to an act of ibadah is that act of ibadah is mandatory and obligatory until proven otherwise. You have to say it until proven otherwise. The Prophet ﷺ, he commanded the companions, he says, فَلْيُؤَذِّن لَكُمْ أَحْدُكُمْ أو فَلْيُؤَذِّن أَحْدُكُمَا. He says, make the adhan. He commanded them to perform the adhan. So, if the command to make the adhan is given, then there's also the command of how to fulfill that command. And that is the specifics of the adhan. The what? The specifics. Putting your hands in your ears, turning right to left, that's one thing. But we're talking about the actual wording of the adhan. There's a huge difference here. So that, when it comes to Salat al-Fajr, whether it's the first adhan for Fajr or the second adhan for Fajr, but saying those words, they're a part of the prophetic instruction that you are to say. So it's not a bid'ah, and a person must say it until proven to be otherwise. As far as he started making the adhan and he forgot, then a brother can remind him. There's nothing wrong with speaking to him. You say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And then he remembers. If someone is making a salat, you can speak to them. They forgot now, even if you're not in prayer. وهكذا. And Allah knows best. Fadal Talib.
Can I lead a Shiite in Salah?
Question says, can you lead a Shiite in salah? Yes and no. From one aspect, you're not responsible for what the people are doing behind you. You're responsible to lead them, to make sure that what you're doing is proper and correct. Somebody may be behind you who's a kafir, a munafiq. You don't know. That's the yes part. But the no part of it is someone who comes into the masjid or in the MSA or at work or in the airport, and you believe this person is not a Muslim. You believe that they aren't a Muslim. It's your responsibility to explain to them salah is for Muslims. But even still, if you're in a public place, you can't control who comes into the prayer. You can't control that. And I'm not saying that every person who says that he or she is a Shia is a kafir. I'm not saying that. Just because a person is a Shiite Muslim doesn't mean they're a what? A non-Muslim. Even though there are certain people who do call themselves Shia and are Shia or whatever, do have kufr akbar with them. And Allah knows best.
MR. Assalamu alaikum, AN from Minneapolis, Minnesota. What is the ruling on saying Sadaqallah al-Azim upon finishing the recitation of the Quran?
What is the ruling on saying Sadaqallah al-Azim after the recitation of the Quran? I would say don't say it. You shouldn't say it. I've never read any specific proof from the Quran and the Sunnah stating the obligation or the recommendation of saying that. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Qul Sadaqallah. It says in Surah Al Imran. So follow the way of Ibrahim, who is Hanif. Qul Sadaqallah. Say Allah has spoken the truth. There's no doubt about that. The Allah speaks the truth and He is Al-Azim. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. Allah tells us. No doubt about that. However, it is scientifically correct to mix and match. Our Islam and our Ibadah is not based off of a collage. A part of an ayah here, a part of a hadith here, a practice of a companion here, and then we have a collage. No, it doesn't work like that. The Prophet ﷺ taught the Quran, recited the Quran to the Sahaba. The Sahaba recited it to him. How did he do it? Did the Prophet say Sadaqallahu al-Azim? No, he didn't. Did the Prophet command the companions to say Sadaqallahu al-Azim? No, he didn't. And there are many proofs and evidences, general and specific. So the concept of bid'ah, when bid'ah is done, oftentimes bid'ah has an asl to it. There's different types of bid'ah. Bid'ah idafiyah. But mixing and matching, specifying and adding your own tweaking to it, that's makes an act of bid'ah. So Allah spoke the truth and He speaks the truth. Sadaqallah. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ. The ayah says, who is more truthful than Allah in speech? Of course. And Allah is also Al-Azim. He's also what? Al-Azim. The most grand, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The grandest. There's no question about that. But did the Prophet use that and put that together? Let alone the fact if a person says it once. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Okay, maybe. But each and every single time you recite the Quran, you say the same thing over and over and over again. And it's a part of the recitation of the Quran. It's a standard practice. And which you look down upon if you don't say it afterwards. That's a major problem now. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu, as we all know, in the authentic hadith in the Sahih, he recited, or he asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu for the Quran to be recited. And he says, I want to hear from someone else. You recite to me, O Ibn Mas'ud. So Ibn Mas'ud, he recited from Surah An-Nisa. And when he reached a certain part of the ayah, فَكَيْفَ Allah says, how will it be when we bring you as a witness upon them? And from each and every nation we bring a what? A shaheed. And he says, Hasbuka. He says, that's enough. And then Ibn Mas'ud said, I looked at the Messenger of Allah sallallahu and his eyes were watering. He's crying. And the Prophet sallallahu never told him to say what? Sadaqallahu al-Azim. So therefore, there has to have a dalil, a proof. Not a vague statement, not an thought of this person, this imam, استحسنه فلان واستحبه فلان قال أصحابنا قال الأصحاب لا بأس به كذا وكذا, which you'll find in the different books of the etiquettes of reciting the Quran. It has to be a hardcore dalil from the authentic sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ commanded them to do it, or allowed them to do it, or he himself did. And if not, then it has no basis. And if a person continues to do it and continues to practice it over and over and over again each and every time, then there lies no doubt is feared to fall into bid'ah. Yukhsha or yukhaf. One fears that he will what? Fall into a bid'ah. Allah knows best.
This was OS from CC Hills, USA. Does touching the private part break wudu?
The question says, does touching the private part break the wudu? There are many madhabs among the ulama about Islam. Very long discussion. I hold the view that intentional touching of one's private part without a barrier or screen breaks wudu. If you touch your private area without a glove or your underpants or towel or washcloth or whatever, with the intention of touching your private part, lustfully or not, then it breaks the wudu. That's the view that I feel is strongest. There are many views among the ulama. Some say that it does not break the private area unless you do it lustfully. Lustfully. You touch your private part or someone touches your private part lustfully. Some say if it's a screen, if you do it by accident, etc. Long discussion. And some say it doesn't break the wudu at all. It's recommended. Wallahu alam. That's in brief.
Oh, that's from CC Hills, Illinois. Is it permissible to work at a public library if the job may require you to stock or check out books that contain haram things or subjects in regards to other religions?
With regards to working as a librarian or a security guard in a library, a public library, a bookstore, etc., it's no different than many other occupations in America, in the United States, or in other countries, even in Muslim countries or in Middle Eastern countries, in which there's a mixture of things. All right? I'm a taxi driver, a cab driver, an Uber driver, and we did a khutbah on this. Okay? What? We spoke on this. Hackney and what? And son. The original term of a hack. Cabs, where they came from the UK, from London. If just let's make a hypothetical question now. If we said, Riyadh, that it's haram for a Muslim to be a taxi driver, how many families will starve? How many table spreads, how many wooden tables will be empty as we speak?
20,000.
A huge percentage of Muslims drive cabs. And those are Muslims who take them to the supermarket. What does the lady buy when she goes to the supermarket? She buys pork chops and wine. You take someone to the club on Sunday morning, you get an Uber, it clearly shows you the address, Episcopal Church. You take them to go worship Jesus or this saint or that saint, and so on and so on and so forth. And a good deal of your driving is to the park, to the dentist, normal, basic, permissible things. So you're not necessarily hired to drive people to haram places or haram locations. As a security guard, you're not hired to deal with books of magic and sorcery and Christianity and this and that. You're just a general servant of the library, protector of the library. It's not your job to look into what the people are reading, so on and so forth. So it's a very challenging issue here. You work in a place, you're not directly dealing with the haram, but it may come up. Like a cashier. You have to swipe the pork tenderloins across the belt. I'm not encouraging you to eat it. I'm not forcing you to eat it. I'm not asking you to eat it, but I have a public job. Someone may come in your line in the supermarket and they may buy all vegetables. And then another person comes and they buy what? Pork. Haram things, or a magazine and tabloid. And then this goes on of haram things in the supermarket. So some people, they say that it's haram to work in a supermarket. It's haram to be an Uber driver. It's haram to be a librarian because there are books of kufr and shirk, books of nudity, books of all types of books. And this, before we move forward, this is a very important point for us to understand that we cannot be hypocritical. Many people are hypocritical. Many of us, unfortunately, we're hypocritical. And we bash things. And we don't have the proper balance. People, they bash the internet. They bash tablets and phones. Why are you reading the tablet? Why are you reading the phone? Why do you have your books on the iPad? Why are you using technology? Pick up an actual book. Read a book. Read a book. The world is ruined because of technology, because of the cell phones and so on and so forth. A lot of that is true. But there's just as much kufr, shirk, nudity, pornography, and what? In books. There are books of sihr, books of sorcery. There are books of sexual perversion. There are books that slander Islam. You can find all of that in Barnes and Nobles. Just like you can find it on a what? A Kindle. It's no different. You read quality, positive, wholesome things on a tablet, and you can read something that's totally destructive, not just to religion and Islam, to life, in a paper book. So we have to stop that. We have to what? We have to stop that. Everybody understand that we cannot be hypocritical. People, they bash Google. Sheikh Google. You can't say Sheikh Google. You can't call Google a sheikh. You can't use Google. Why not? There are books of bid'ah. There are books of all types of batil, Sufi practices, grave worshiping in the books, in the fiqh books. So it doesn't make a difference, guys. Everybody understand this? So therefore, it's very challenging. Some people say you can't have these jobs. Right. Others may say you can have those jobs because you're not responsible. You're just a public driver. You drive someone to the park, to the dentist, to the doctor's office, and you drive someone to the nightclub or a gay bar. What do you do? You're not an Uber driver. You're a taxi cab. You can't deny. Okay. They say, take me to such and such in Soho, Manhattan. What are you going to do? Everybody clear on this? I will blame the shaitan regime. Okay, they report your taxi number. He discriminated against me because I had on a rainbow halter top, and it was a man with a beard and a mustache.
$1,000 a month off.
$1,000 a month off. Your family starve. They say, I'm not responsible for that. I drive people around wherever they want to go. And then there are those who have a balanced approach. I try my best to avoid directly touching the haram. I try to dance into wiggling and get out of touching things, even through a coworker. Can you stack that shelf for me? Can you take this call for me? You try your best. But you can only wiggle and dance and maneuver, but what? But so much. Before you get pinned in the corner, or before one of your boss or your supervisor says, hey, what are you doing? You always keep avoiding this. You take this call. You stack this. You return these books. So we have to be mindful that we live in the United States. We are minorities. Our infrastructure, our financial stability, so on and so forth, all of these things are lacking. So we need to create our own jobs and businesses. Okay, we need to make things and Islamify them. And there are many of us that need to be with the normal jobs to promote Islam and to spread Islam. Okay, and not to be accused of removing ourselves from society and having the characteristics of a cult. Because that's the first sign of a cult, is when people totally extract themselves from the normal day-to-day life of the people. Everybody understands this is the first sign. It's people who specialize in cult behavior, the first sign is to do what? Exclude themselves. We're not involving ourselves with anyone except those on our indoctrination. And that's dangerous. Some Muslims have to do that. You shouldn't mix. But there are certain people that have to what? Be in certain positions. Everybody clear on this? So until we have enough stability to totally remove ourselves and have our own supermarkets, our own libraries, things like this, there's going to have to be a relative type of what? Mixing. And there are going to be some nicks and some cuts that you're going to come across. But you're between breaking your bone or getting a scratch or a cut. The smart person will pick what? The cut instead of the fracturing of the bone. I can work at a clearly haram job. Or I can work at a halal job to have some, from time to time, somewhat haram elements. I drive a taxi. I can make salat. I can make Jum'ah. I can have my beard. I don't shake women's hands. I don't have to deal with this type of interest, so on and so forth. But from time to time, I have to do what? Sunday morning, take the lady to the church. Or this or that. What can you do? Fear Allah to the best of your ability. Try your best. Try to be sincere. And the ulama of Islam, they say, always pay extra zakah. Always pay what? Extra zakah. Because who is the one that has a job that's 101% halal in 2018? Some of the ulama, they mention this. They explain this. That's what I feel on this situation. And I feel that this is balanced and a reasonable answer. And Allah knows best.
From Cologne, Germany. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I wanted to know if it is permissible to call your stepmother mom, and if it isn't allowed, how should she be called?
It's permissible to call someone father or mother who isn't your father or mother, or even your father or stepmother. A sheikh, walid. You say al-walid. Call him the father, our father. A sheikh, he calls his student, says, Ya waladi, Ya bunayya, ibni, abna'i, at-tullab. He says, my what? My sons, who are my students. And everyone knows that no one is related to the sheikh through blood, but they're related through ilm. So you can call someone who isn't your father or mother, your father or mother, out of honor and respect. So if someone is living with you, you take care of them, you raise them, so on and so forth, and they call you ummi or mother instead of saying stepmother, stepmother, or such and such. That's one thing. If a person feels problematic about the issue, yani ud'uhum li'abaihim, the concept of adopting, things like this, call her auntie. But it has to be some name of respect. It has to be some type of name or title of closeness and compassion. And it can't be a strange feeling of coldness. Everybody understand this? This person lives with you. She practically is your mother. She didn't give you birth, but she feeds you, she looks after you. She's with your father, so on and so forth. She has children that come from your father's loins. You're related one way or another. So it has to be some type of title of respect and address of closeness and warmth, if you want the situation to actually work out. Allah knows best. Nahyan.
Now, in many of our curriculums in the colleges or in some aspects in high schools, they kind of teach us, like, you know, a lot of like leftist ideology and like some types of philosophy that is clear cut against Islam. Now, how would you advise us to actually like deal with this kind of situation?
What is your major?
I'm doing computer science, but from time to time they make you take like writing classes, and most often than not, the teacher is like.
You can't leave after wujud. La. Fadal.
A lot of the writing courses, the professors are like, they generally lean leftist, towards leftist ideology.
Clear. Tahir. With that being said, with regards to a Muslim who studies in college, and sometimes they have to take courses or write papers or write essays that are leftists, that deal with certain philosophies and understandings that are clearly against the teachings of Islam. What should we do, or what do you advise us with? It's similar to the previous, or the question before last, with regards to being in a situation which is normally halal. But from time to time, things come up and pop up and sprout out, which are clearly haram, or at best, doubtful. Gray. So, why are you getting this degree? What will it lead you to? What is the purpose of you studying it? You being independent, you making halal wealth, you making money in which you can support yourself, get married, raise a family, take care of your parents, so on and so forth. Sometimes you may have to take a couple of nicks and cuts and scratches to get through that. Such as a barber. We made the famous example of a barber. Once there was a brother, or I believe a brother or sister, asked me a question with regards to working in a bank. Being trained formally in a riba bank. In order to get the experience to become accredited and certified and then Islamify his profession. You cannot reach the certified level unless you do certain things like haram, being a barber. I want to have my own barber shop in which there's no music playing. There's no naked shampoo girl. There's no people watching pornography, laughing, cursing, joking, games. None of the haram things in our barbershop. We don't shave beards. We don't do women's eyebrows. No, but to get the barber's license, you have to be trained how to shave someone's face. You have to know the veins, the different arteries, the muscle structure, the skin type of a person's face and neck. You have to learn how to do this. You have a razor blade on someone's neck. You have to be trained. You have to know certain things. You have to do certain haram things. You have to learn these things to become certified. So if you don't become certified and do those small haram things, you won't have the ability to be independent in which you can totally Islamify the barbershop. And you're going to work in a barbershop with kuffar, laughing and joking and cursing and drinking and staring at women and gossiping. You have to pick your poison. You have to what? Pick your poison. So therefore, just because you write an essay or you have to read the book, you don't mean you have to believe in it. It could be total trash to you. But you have to get through it in order for you to reach a level of what? Why can I? So there are many, many issues like this. And the same applies to a bank. And this is critical, brothers and sisters, critical. You cannot understand riba, the ins and the outs in Islamic finance and Islamic economics unless you have a thorough understanding of what? The modern economics. You have to know what riba is to know how to avoid it. We're talking about someone who's learning. As far as the layman Muslim, that's a different story. We're talking about an Islamic scholar who specializes in finance, a researcher who specializes in Islamic finance. He has to know the system of riba from what? In and out, head to toe. Because many people, they think that things are riba, but it's not actually riba. They think that it's haram, but it's not actually haram. You can't know that unless you what? Have been trained. So the brother, he says, can I work in a bank? I have to get experience, I have to get a certain amount of hours under my belt, then I can branch off. So we have to be objective and transparent when it comes to these types of issues, especially living as minorities. And Allah knows best.
Initials OS from CC Hills, Illinois.
What's important is that when you write an answer, you tell them what the sources say. You don't have to say, I believe. Now, many people, they're going to become upset by this, or they may not agree. That's fine. Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Abbad, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, in Medina, he was always asked about studying in the Azhar Sharif. Is it permissible to go to Azhar? Can we study it in Azhar? The Sheikh would say, yes, it's permissible to go to Azhar. He says, well, what about when they give us an exam and they teach us Ash'ari Aqidah? That's clearly against the Kitab and the Sunnah and Ijma', against the way of Ahl Sunnah, pertaining to Allah's names and attributes and other issues of Aqidah. He said, write on the exam, هذا ما يقوله, this is what the Ash'ari say, and this is what Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah says. This is what Aristotle said, Fulan and Fulan, and that's it. If they ask you for your personal opinion, you give your personal opinion. Just because you write something or take an exam or you're evaluated doesn't mean that you have to what? Believe in it. Abadan. Abadan. And Allah knows best. Tfaddal.
This is OS from CC Hills, Illinois. Are women allowed to ride horses for fun, or does this come under imitating men?
Question says, are women allowed to ride horses for fun? Or does this fall under imitating men? We can answer the question from many different aspects. First and foremost is that there are many things that Muslims are allowed to do, and they aren't allowed to do it just for sport and recreation. Even though it may seem to be a sport and a means of recreation, but it's a deeper meaning, such as riding a horse. Obviously, the concept of warfare and battle has changed. Over 1,000 years ago, the way people think about wars, not fight, the way they think, it's like night and day. But there are many parallels and many consistent concepts that have survived the times. Basic things that never change in military science, such as outflanking your opponent, That applies to every situation. A horse, a tank, a drone is to do what? Outflanking the opponent. Basic rules, basic arithmetic of military science. But there are certain things that have changed. How many people go into battle on a horse today? So the Prophet ﷺ is narrated that he encouraged us with regards to the riding of horses. And then he told us that there's barakah in the horse. And the forelock of the horse has what? Is ma'qud fi nawasiha al-khayr. It's good in their forelocks until the day of judgment. The stool of the horse, the manure of the horse, the urine of the horse, feeding of the horse. Many hadiths about horses and the virtues of horses. Not just for recreation, horses are beautiful, but for the concept of war mind. Muslim is supposed to be trained. Muslim has to have the ability to ride. Horse is power. So I say horsepower, a steed of war. Everyone understand this? Some people, they say there's no jihad in Juzama. They say there's no ayah in about jihad in Juzama because Juzama was all sent down in Mecca. In Mecca there was no jihad. That's not true. Every surah in Juzama was not sent down in the Meccan period. Certain surahs were sent down where? In the period of Medina, towards the end of the Prophet's life. Allah says what? Wal Fath. That was towards the what? End of his life. And other surahs as well in Juzama. Let alone the fact that Allah, He swears by what in Juzama? He talks about the what? Keep moving. La, not asr, la. Allah says the adiyat, which are what? Steeds of what? War. And they move so quickly, so powerfully that their hooves make what? Qadhan, they make sparks. Imagine this. And then فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمَعًا. Allah says until they penetrate the ranks of the enemy. It's talking about marauding, raiding the enemy on horseback. We agree on this, Alameen, or I'm making this up? Does this come from my deviant pocket? Or that's what the Quran says. Everybody doing this or not? Allah, He swears by these amazing creatures, these animals. So riding a horse for a Muslim is never ever just for fun and sport. The Prophet ﷺ, he allowed the Abyssinians to play with their swords, twist their swords, twirl their swords, spin their swords as a means of recreation, but a deeper meaning, and that was to train in warfare. Jihad, fi sabilillah. That's one of the reasons why He allowed them to do that, and not just for sheer fun. So men are not allowed to ride horses and to keep horses just for what? Sheer fun. Even if people do not use horses today, it's the mindset. The what? The warrior mentality that every Muslim is supposed to have. Now I know many people, they're not going to like this, they're going to be upset, but the truth, I'm not allowed to put sugar on top of it. The Muslim is supposed to have the warrior mindset. Even if you're not fighting, the warrior mindset. This is how it is, guys, whether we like it or not. So the concept of men, are men allowed to ride horses just for fun? Everybody understand this? So if a man has a responsibility with regards to a bow and an arrow, it's not just recreation. It's not just for hunting, but it's what? Mindset. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. And there are many other things like that with regards to the mindset. Everybody understand this? The same applies to horses. So we have to ask ourselves the question, are men allowed to ride horses just for fun? Everybody understand this? So for a woman who's also a Muslim, and she also has to have the warrior mindset as well, on one level or what? Another. Her riding a horse with that intention, with that purpose, is applicable as well. Is what? Applicable as well. So I don't think that it's going to be necessarily imitating a man, let alone there are certain things in Islam which are unisex. There's certain things that men and women do in Islam, and there's nothing wrong with that. Let alone that how a woman rides a horse is not like how a what? A man rides a horse. There's a difference. It's a difference. The type of horse, there's a difference. What's important is a woman riding a horse is permissible for recreation. It's permissible for sport. It's permissible for her to be in the what? The warrior mindset, the barakah of the horse. And if she does it in a manner that's befitting of a woman, and it is not specific to a man, then I don't know of any scholar of Islam who said that it's haram. I don't know of any alim who mentioned proof from Quran and Sunnah or Ijma' to state that it's haram. And Allah knows best.
SA from Ottawa, Canada. If a person is traveling on the road during Maghrib and they get to their destination by Isha, do they shorten Maghrib or pray it on arrival?
There's no shortening of Maghrib. According to all of the ulama of Islam, it's consensus, ijma'. The Maghrib is made with 3 units. There's no 2 units of Maghrib. As far as, or perhaps the question meant combine Isha. What's important is that a traveler has 2 main states. The first state or condition is that you're actually what? Rakib or Sa'ir. You're actually riding. And then you become nazil. You've stopped. I'm still on a trip. I'm a traveler, but I'm not actually on the what? On the road anymore. So what's important is if you get to your destination and it's time for Salat al-Isha, then obviously it was supposed to be your intention to intentionally delay Maghrib until you get there. You make Maghrib with 3 and Isha with 2. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.
Next question set is initials OA from Riyadh, King of Saudi Arabia. Please explain the harms of taking interest-based loans.
Question says, please explain the harms of taking interest-based loans. I would say one of those harms is that you're made to be a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah tells us in His glorious book, everyone in the heavens and the earth, they'll come to Ar-Rahman as a slave. Allah created you to worship Him and to be His slave, His servant. One day Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, it is reported, and Allah knows best, that he went out to lead the Muslims in battle once. And before the battle, or before they made their duel in front of both sides, he wanted to give a speech and an address to those mushrikun, to the non-Muslims. And it is quoted that it is narrated that he said, "O slaves, he said, O people," he says, "we've come here to open this country up as conquerors, but with the purpose of taking Allah's slaves from the worship of other slaves of Allah and to deliver them to the servitude and the slavery of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've come to free you from worshiping men to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." That's the main ultimate aim and objective of our jihad fi sabilillah and al-qital. It's to remove men from worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, I would say humbly, from riba-based loans, from the harms, is that it makes you a slave and a servant of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not saying that you're a non-Muslim, it's shirk or kufr akbar, but the concept is that you're always in debt. You make money to pay off debt, all of the time, heavy debt. And that many aspects of our modern lives today are based off of slavery. Everything is with credit. You buy your television, your sofa, your car, your education, everything is off of debt. And then before you know it, you have a chain and a ball on your ankle. You're a slave. Everything that you own can be taken from you. Everything that you make, your children, they also inherit that debt. And you just become a slave of riba. And that's a huge, huge problem. We don't want to go too far in this, conspiracy theories or skepticism, but this is the reality of the modern financial system, that it creates slaves. And countries that owe money and have billions of dollars in debt, they pay it off with what? More debt. And this is a big, huge game. So we have to be mindful of this. So I would humbly say, from, not the only one, but from the harms of these debts, is that they cause you to be a slave of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as taking the riba-based debt out of necessity, then that's a different discussion. As far as taking or having some type of financial dealings, a house, a mortgage, or this and that, that's not actually riba. Some people may think it's riba or call it riba. Then that's also a different discussion. But we're talking about a clear-cut loan that's based off of the interest, the haram that Allah Azza wa Jal has made impermissible. The riba, let's use that word, because interest and usury, sometimes it can become tricky. I'm not saying that interest is halal and riba, but it can become what? Tricky. Okay? What's important is it's clear riba. The riba that Allah Azza wa Jal declared war upon, from the harms of that is that it makes you a slave. What did the brother say, Abu Sa'id? He said, when I graduate from school, law school, or to be a doctor, how long does it take him to pay off the debts? He said, what? 30 years. 30 years. So he's going to graduate at what age, roughly? Let's say he started early. 35, he starts his life as a doctor, roughly. So he's not going to be done paying off that debt. Not his house, not his marriage, just for his education, to be a doctor and to make all of this money. And so many Muslims want to be doctors, 65 years old. That's serious. That's what? That's serious. We even live to 60. Huh? So we have to be mindful of this. Allah knows best.
This was an essay from Ottawa, Canada. If you become pure from menstruation during the middle of the day, while at work, etc., and there is no access to water, should you delay the salah or should you do tayammum?
Make the tayammum. If a woman becomes pure from her menstruation in the middle of the day and there's no way to make a ghusl, and you're not going to get back home in time, make the tayammum and offer the prayer. Offer the prayer. Bismillah. When you get home, you make your ghusl.
Initials essay from Ottawa, Canada. How should a wife respond when her husband constantly reminds her of his favors, i.e., how he provides, how it's his house, etc., etc.?
A woman who's constantly reminded of her husband's favors upon her, it's his house, he provides, etc. If this reminding and bringing up of these favors, if it's unwarranted, it's unjustified, there's no reason behind it, then remind him to fear Allah. And remind him of the words of Allah and the words of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, with regards to al-man wal-adha, bringing up your favor and injuring people. It's mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions about the people on the day of judgment who have a great punishment. Allah will not look towards them, they will not be purified, Allah will not speak to them. And it says from them, al-mannan is the one who brings up his favor. I did this, I did this, I did this. I bought you, I gave you, I took you. It's a major sin in Allah's land. So remind him of these things. What? Remind him of those things. As far as if the husband has to bring these things up and say these things because of something else, then that's a different story. Oftentimes, there are many people who are extremely ungrateful. There are many people who become puffed up with pride and arrogance and conceit. And oftentimes they forget the basic rule of life. Never bite the hand that feeds you. It's a basic principle of life. Don't be ungrateful to someone who is good to you. So sometimes you may be forced to remind someone of the reality. It may be a student who's disrespectful, who doesn't have the necessary respect for the teacher. I'm this and that, and refute you and say, wait, oh, slow down. I'm the one who gave you your first bow and arrow. I'm the one who gave you your first wooden practice sword. Now you're wielding a razor sharp sword to cut my head off. I'm the first one who gave you a wooden sword. Relax, slow down. Everybody understand this? So if there's a child or a parent or a husband, whoever, someone's being unruly, you may have to remind them what? Who pays the bills? You have to remind them, subhanAllah, this is how you treat me and I do this for you? So that's a different story. Whether it be a wife or a husband, whoever it is, we just made metaphors with regards to the student. I taught him how to shoot a bow and arrow. Then he's trying to launch an arrow at me. You have to remind him who taught you first, who took you off the streets. You had nothing. I accepted you. I gave you this. So if it's warranted, then that's one thing. If it's not, if it's baseless, he's just doing it just out of holding up over someone's head, then that's a major sin. And it's haram. And advise them with the text from the Quran and the Sunnah that prohibit that. And Allah knows best.
This was an essay from Ottawa, Canada. What is the best book to learn the 99 names of Allah?
There's no best book to learn the 99 names of Allah. There's no such thing as that. For several reasons. First and foremost is, I haven't read every book on the topic. So how can I tell you the best book? That would mean that I what? And I can't say that. Number two is there one book that entails all 99 names authentically? Or even deeper than that, let's go even deeper than that. Is there a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that gives us 99 names of Allah that is authentic? Everybody clear on this? Is there a prophetic hadith in which all 99 names of Allah are mentioned in one place that is sahih? Everybody clear on this? Are there books that mention certain names of Allah, certain books that give 99, but oftentimes these books are going to be based off of hadith, which are what? Totally weak. Everybody understand this? So there is no doubt that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Allah has 100 names minus one. Inna lillahi, he says Allah has 100 names, minus one, 99 names. Man ahsaha dakhala al-jannah. He who knows them all who counts them all, who memorizes them all, will enter paradise. He who calls upon Allah with those names and acts upon those names will enter what? Jannah. So Allah, there is no doubt Allah has 99 names. That's number one. Number two, there is no doubt that Allah has more than 99 names. He doesn't just have 99. But He's told us that He has 99 upon the tongue of His messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore, many of these names are mentioned in the Quran. Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, Al-Alim, Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum, Al-Kabir, Al-Muta'al. Many of these names, Al-Qadir, etc. Many of these names, Al-Hamid, many names. And the interesting fact is that many ulama of Islam, they differ over which are or aren't Allah's names. Differ. Al-Muhsin, is that Allah's name? Al-Rashid, is that Allah's name? Is Al-Hadi Allah's name? Al-Mannan, or not even Al-Mannan, that's not a necessary good example. Al-Hanan, and many other names. Al-Basit, can someone have the name Abdul Basit? Is Allah's name Al-Basit? Or is Allah Azza wa Jalla Al-Qabid Al-Basit? Together. So there are rules and principles governing what we understand and how we understand Allah's names. So therefore there are many of Allah's names mentioned in the Quran. And there are many authentic hadiths in which Allah's names are mentioned. Everybody clear on this? But to say that we have all 99 in one place, in one authentic hadith, something that's very challenging. Everybody understand this? So most books that mention 99 names, they're going to be based off of that what? That hadith. That's not necessarily sahih, the hadith al-baqiyya. Everybody clear on this or not? So what's important is read the Quran. Read the Quran. Read the authentic hadiths. Read the Kutub Sitta. Read these hadiths and come across Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names. If you wanted a specific book on a topic in which many of them are mentioned, and it is an authentic book, a good book by a qualified author, then perhaps one could say Al-Qawaid al-Muthla. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Qawaid al-Muthla, the exemplary principles concerning Allah's beautiful names. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, the book has been translated many years ago. And there are other books as well. That's not the only book. If you wanted one book that's a sound book, then perhaps you can go back to that book. And in that book, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala, he quotes what is mentioned of Allah's Azza wa Jalla's Asma'ul Husna. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed knows best is a very long-winded and extensive topic. And many of us don't have the proper understanding of this. And it's not that simple and easy. Just because the name is mentioned in the Quran does not mean that it's from the Asma'ul Husna. Absolutely. Certain names that go what? Together. Such as Al-Qabid Al-Basit. And it isn't necessarily correct or proper to take the name Abdul Qabid. Everybody understand this? There are rules. There are rules. Al-Wadud. وهكذا. Al-Ghafur. Many different names like this. And Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. We'll stop here. Sallallahu sallam wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina Muhammad. Wallahu alam.